What do you do when the one person you swore you'd never fall for is the only one who truly makes you feel alive? When the line between right and wrong blurs, and everything you thought was sacred suddenly feels like a lie, how do you stop yourself from crossing it? I had everything I ever wanted. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. A thriving career, a stable marriage, friends who adored me. From the outside, my life looked perfect. But inside? I felt like I was disappearing, like I was going through the motions of a life I no longer recognized. Ethan, my husband, he worked endlessly, always away on business. And when he was home, he was distant, lost in his own world, and I was left to fill the empty spaces. My career, my success, those were the things I clung to. But no matter how many cases I won or how much money I made, it couldn't fill the loneliness that swallowed me whole. Sophie, my best friend, she could see it. She always pushed me to take risks, to break out of this suffocating routine. You need to feel alive again, she'd say. I knew she was right, but I didn't know how to find that spark. And then there was Dylan. Sophie's friend, a writer with a magnetic presence, someone who was everything I didn't know I was missing. He was confident, effortlessly charming, and when he looked at me, I felt seen. Really seen, like the woman I used to be. It was innocent at first, just casual conversation, but with every word, every laugh, it became impossible to ignore what was building between us. And that terrified me. It started so subtly. A glance here, a laugh there, small touches that lingered just a little too long. Dylan had this way about him, effortless, magnetic, like he wasn't trying to impress, yet somehow he still had my full attention. And the more time I spent with him, the more I realized how much I had been craving this. How long had it been since I felt seen, desired, like the woman I used to be? With Ethan, it felt like I had become invisible, caught in the role of the dutiful wife, the partner who kept everything in place but forgot to live. Dylan made me feel alive again. At first, I told myself it was harmless, just innocent flirting. But it wasn't. I felt the pull, the temptation, growing stronger each day. I found myself looking for excuses to spend more time with him, seeking out those moments when the connection between us seemed almost palpable. And the worst part? I couldn't stop myself. The more I thought about him, the more I wanted him. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't help it. Every time we were together, every word he spoke, made me question everything I thought I knew about love, about loyalty. I was standing on the edge, and every part of me wanted to jump. And then one night, it happened. I wasn't planning on it. It wasn't like I had been plotting this out in my head. But when Dylan leaned in to say something, his breath warm against my ear, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. It felt like the entire room had vanished, and there was nothing but the two of us. My heart was racing, and I knew that if I stepped back now, I'd be lying to myself. I couldn't go back. I couldn't pretend anymore. I reached out, and before I even knew it, our lips met. The kiss was slow, deliberate, as if he had been waiting for me to give him permission, but also as if he'd known I was already his. For a brief moment, time stood still. My body felt like it was on fire, my mind blank with nothing but the feeling of him. And in that moment, all my doubts, my guilt, my fears vanished. The only thing that existed was us, our kiss, our connection. I pulled away, breathless, my body trembling. I should have stopped, should have pushed him away and told him it was a mistake, but instead, I stayed there. I stayed because it felt like something I had been missing for so long. The next few days were a blur of confusion and guilt. I couldn't look at Ethan the same way anymore. Every time he touched me, I felt the weight of what I had done. Every word he spoke felt like a reminder of the lie I was living. And yet, when I thought of Dylan, when I closed my eyes, all I could feel was the spark of that kiss, the taste of his lips on mine. It was like I was trapped in two worlds, one where I loved my husband, and one where I couldn't stop thinking about the man who made me feel alive again. I told myself I could stop this, that I could just go back to being the wife I was before. But something inside me knew better. I was already too deep. And the hardest part? I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to let go of the rush of feeling wanted, of feeling alive in a way that had nothing to do with the comfort I had built with Ethan. I was addicted to the chaos Dylan had brought into my life, and now I had to figure out how to live with it. The guilt, the regret, the desire, everything mixed together in a cocktail that I couldn't put down. The moment came, unplanned, unexpected. One evening, after several more of those conversations that made my pulse race, Dylan and I found ourselves alone in the corner of the room at another gathering. The music was low, the room filled with laughter and chatter, but all I could hear was the sound of my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't just the way he looked at me, or the way his voice made every word seem intimate, it was the weight of what I knew was about to happen. We were standing close, too close, and when he reached for the wine glass on the table, our hands brushed again. This time, neither of us pulled away. Our eyes locked, and for a second, the world seemed to stop moving. I could see the intensity in his gaze, and I couldn't look away. The heat between us wasn't just physical anymore, it was raw, emotional and undeniable. It felt like a storm building, like something inside me had been waiting for this moment to break free. And in that silence, that small perfect pause before everything changed, I knew that if I kissed him, I wouldn't be able to stop. I could feel my breath hitch, the temptation overwhelming. But what terrified me more wasn't the kiss itself, it was how right it felt. As if this was the missing piece I had been longing for. For a moment, I hesitated, but only for a moment. Then he leaned in, and everything shifted. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but nothing could have prepared me for how it felt. His lips were soft, warm, and as soon as they met mine, it felt like the world outside disappeared. It was slow at first, hesitant, but as soon as I kissed him back, everything inside me ignited. The guilt, the fear, everything was drowned out by the thrill, the rush of finally feeling something real, something that was just for me. It was more than just a kiss, it was a promise of something more, something deeper. I pulled him closer, my body responding instinctively. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly alive, like I was no longer invisible, no longer trapped in the monotony of my own life. It felt like freedom, like every part of me was waking up from a long slumber. But in the back of my mind, I knew what this would cost. I knew that once I crossed this line, there was no going back. But right then, with his hands on my body and his lips on mine, I didn't care. I wasn't thinking about the consequences. All I could think about was him, and how badly I wanted this to be real. The next morning, everything felt different. I woke up in my bed, the soft sheets around me, but my mind was elsewhere. The kiss, the way he made me feel, it haunted me. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, that it was just a moment of weakness, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. It wasn't a mistake, it was exactly what I had been searching for. I kept replaying the way he held me, the way his eyes made me feel like I was the only woman in the room. And when I looked at Ethan, when he kissed me goodbye as he left for work, it hit me, I had crossed a line. I wasn't the same person anymore. I was torn between the life I had built, the comfort of my marriage, and the craving for something new, something that made me feel alive. I couldn't stop thinking about Dylan. He had become the escape I had longed for, the spark I didn't know I was missing. But every time I thought of him, I felt a weight in my chest, the crushing guilt of betraying Ethan. I was stuck in this inescapable web of desire and regret, and I didn't know if I could untangle myself from it. The more I tried to ignore it, the more the tension grew. I could feel it in the air every time Ethan and I were together, this heavy silence, this distance I couldn't bridge no matter how hard I tried. It was like we were strangers sharing the same space, moving through the motions without really connecting. Ethan started asking questions. Small ones at first. Are you okay? You seem distracted. But I could feel the weight behind them. And then one night, it was no longer just a question, it was an accusation. Amelia, are you seeing someone else? His voice cracked as he said it, like he was terrified of the answer. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I tried to deny it, to keep the lie intact, but I could see it in his eyes. He already knew. And in that moment, the shame was unbearable. I wanted to tell him, wanted to scream out everything, but the truth felt like it would break us, maybe even destroy everything we had. So, I stayed silent. I didn't say a word. But the guilt crushed me with every breath I took. The silence stretched for what felt like hours, but in reality, it was only a few minutes. Ethan didn't say much after that. He didn't need to. The hurt in his eyes said it all. It was in the way he avoided me, the way he spoke so little, as if the very air between us had become toxic. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't escape the truth I had tried to bury. And then it hit me, my marriage, my family, my life. None of it felt real anymore. Dylan, the excitement he brought, the connection I felt, it was all I could think about now. But what was it worth? Ethan was slipping away from me, and with every passing moment, it felt like I was losing him for good. I had crossed a line I could never uncross. There was no going back. I had to make a choice. But I couldn't. Not yet. The decision was never going to be easy, but it was inevitable. I spent days, weeks, torturing myself with the thought of choosing between the life I had known and the life I thought I wanted. I loved Ethan. I always had. But Dylan had shown me a side of myself I had forgotten, a side I had been longing to rediscover. And as much as I hated myself for it, I couldn't let go. I had made a choice, and there was no way to undo it. The morning I left the house for the last time, I didn't look back. Not even once. I couldn't. I had to move forward, even if that meant walking away from everything I had built. I had to choose myself. And here I am, alone with my choices. Did I make the right one? I don't know. What I do know is that I couldn't keep pretending to be someone I wasn't. I couldn't keep living a lie, trying to please everyone but myself. And as I sit here, looking back at what I've left behind, I realize that the person I am now isn't the same one who walked away. I've lost a lot, things I can never get back, but I've gained something too. Freedom. The freedom to choose, to live, to feel. I thought I was escaping something, but now, I understand that I was really running towards something. Maybe it's not perfect, maybe it's messy, but it's real. And that's all I can ask for now. It happened in the worst possible way. I thought I could keep the secrets buried, that I could still play the role of the devoted wife, but Ethan knew. He always knew. I didn't even have the chance to explain. One afternoon, he came home early from his trip, unannounced. His eyes, swollen and red, told me everything before he even spoke a word. He held up my phone, a text from Dylan glaring back at me. "What's this?" Ethan asked, his voice cracked and hoarse. The question hung in the air like a noose. I tried to deny it, tried to say it wasn't what it seemed, but the hurt in his eyes told me that I had already crossed the line. He didn't scream. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. His silence was deafening, and that was worse than anything he could have said. I spent the next few days in a fog, numb to everything around me. Ethan was gone. He left with the kind of finality I didn't think was possible. He didn't even look back. I didn't reach out to Dylan. In fact, I barely thought about him at all anymore. What had once felt like a thrilling escape now seemed like nothing more than a fleeting mistake. Ethan's absence, his silence, it consumed me. The house felt too empty, the quiet too loud. I kept replaying the moment when he found out, seeing his face as he stood there, broken by the weight of my betrayal. I kept wondering if he would have ever forgiven me, or if, deep down, I knew I had ruined us beyond repair. I didn't want to be the person who let their marriage crumble for a momentary high, but I was. And now, I was paying the price. I thought I could have it all, balance my marriage with the thrill of something new, something exciting. But I was wrong. I didn't lose just my marriage. I lost myself. I tried to fill the emptiness with passion, but all I got in return was this: regret, loneliness, and the haunting memory of what could have been. I lost Ethan, but I also lost the woman I used to be, the one who had known what she wanted, the one who believed in the life she built. Now all I have are the pieces of a life I thought was perfect, but was really just a shell. I can't undo what I've done. But I can learn from it. And maybe one day, I'll find my way back to myself. As I sit here, reflecting on the aftermath, I realize how easily we can lose ourselves in the pursuit of fleeting desires. It's easy to ignore the consequences in the heat of the moment, but the damage can last forever. If you've ever found yourself caught between your responsibilities and your own desires, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Amelia's shoes? Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more stories that explore the complex emotions behind love, betrayal, and the choices we make. And remember, sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we need the most. Take a moment to reflect. Could this story have been your own?